drop on steep terrain. We've already talked about letting the bicycle dictate where we are on steep terrain. So if I'm rolling down something steep, my bicycle is going to have moved just in front of me. That's going to put me a little bit over the back of the bicycle. What's going to happen now if I want to hit a drop? We've talked about the fact that I need to be able to move toward the back of the cockpit in order to create the energy necessary to lift the front end. In this situation, because I'm on a steep hill and I'm toward the back of the bike, I'm going to have to move forward, back into the bicycle, stand over my pedals, and stand into the hill to give myself a place to move to create the energy I need to elevate the front end. Now, if there are multiple drops, I'm just going to repeat that process. I'm going to stand into that first drop. As soon as I'm about to go off it, I'm going to slide back, create the tension in my palms I need, make that drop, let my bike jockey and do what it needs to do, move back forward into it, and do that process again. And that's what's necessary for dropping on steep terrain. I need to reload the gun every time I shoot it. If I want to drop this properly, I have to create some motivation. And there's a lot of things written that say push down on your fork or pull up with your hands. Either one of those things is going to take us away from what we're trying to do, which is to go down. If I push down and load my fork, it's going to bring me back up, and then I come down. If I pull up, I got to go up before I come down. I want to go down. For a basic drop, what I'm going to do is I'm going to shift back into my hips and create a longer line effectively between my hands and my hips, which is going to create an invisible line of tension that's going to cause that front end to carry for just a second. So I need to stand in the middle of the rider compartment, give myself a place to go, and as my front tire is about to roll off the edge, I shift back to the point where when my back tire is on the edge of the drop, I'm at my furthest point back, then I simply just let the bike fall underneath me, and I just come down and land on top. So just for a second, I'm going to be brave, and I'm going to stand and match the pitch of the hill, effectively loading that gun that I need to fire, right? So now I'm going to come down here, and I'm going to have a place to move. If I shifted my hips back too soon here, and then the bike came toward this drop, that's going to counteract by having my hips too far back. It's going to make the front end dive and make my heels come over, right? So I just want to be nice and patient and just relax. Let all that weight shift down into my feet and just relax. Move down toward it, and then right at the edge, make my next movement and rejoin the bike. So what you're doing is you're back here a little bit and you're moving down a little bit, but you're still keeping it moving. You're not stopping midway, so it's good. But your arc is a little bit flat down here, and then it drops down. As you move down here, you kind of got to the end of your movement here a little bit, so you firmed up here a little bit, and that shot you a little bit further. If you had just started a little later with your move, so that you were a little bit in more of a pliable, soft state right here, then your feet would unfold more easily. As you're moving through your squat, think about squatting here and not squatting here so much. It looked really good. I mean, really, what's going to get you all the way to the bottom is just repeating this over and over. When a rider rides off fours, it means that he or she has pulled from both the hands and the feet simultaneously, creating kind of a rigid rider and a unified package that's kind of at the mercy of the terrain. We want to make sure that we lead with our hands and follow with our feet to enable our body to open up, free up, and be as athletic as possible. If I bunny hop incorrectly, I'm pulling from my hands and my feet simultaneously. This is the same sort of motion you might see that rider make off a jump that might create catastrophe in the air. When I ride off fours, my body is essentially static. And when I come up off a jump, I better have done it right, because everything is going to rotate around my static body. So if I'm slightly crooked, I'm going to continue to list in the air. If I'm come up and I'm slightly nose heavy, I'm going to continue to list in the air. Very important that my hands and my feet are constantly moving independently. It's one of the biggest things that separates riders at all levels. Very advanced riders will always lead with their hands and follow with their feet, whether they're J-hopping, jumping, turning, or whatever they might be doing. They're leading with their hands and following with their feet, allowing for recourse again. Let's spend a few minutes talking about jumping. Jumping can be one of the most difficult techniques to learn, but one of the most rewarding to enjoy. When we're taking off a jump, we want to be sure that we contact the lip of the jump with both the front and the rear wheel. This is going to give us the proper altitude, distance, and it's also going to set our bicycle up correctly for a nice transition on the landing. So as I'm rolling up the face of the jump, my front tire is going to unload right here off the lip of the jump. It's going to continue on up. Back tire is going to hit the lip of the jump. That lip is going to give me the altitude I want and the distance I want, but additionally, it's going to give me that kick I need to get into the proper transition for my landing. When we're landing, we're going to do a very similar thing. We talked about our correct takeoff, front wheel first, then back wheel, getting the full benefit of the lip. And that's going to kick us into a nice flight arc, at the top of which we're going to start to come back down again. And we're going to look for our landing in the same way. Our front tire is going to land first, and then our back tire comes down in the same place, not at the same time. If I come down all at once, all at the same time, that can be okay in some situations, but in general, I want to make sure I lead with the front wheel and gain control of my bicycle as soon as possible. That is, as soon as the front wheel contacts the ground. I'm also going to be setting myself up for a slightly softer landing because I can use shorter transitions if I only go one wheel at a time. If I go both wheels at the same time, I'm required to land on something at least the length of my bicycle. One of the more basic aspects of jumping really is the difference between being active and being passive into the face of a jump. In general, I, as a rider, have control over how much air I get off a jump at a given speed based on how much foot pressure I put into the face of that jump, how much I let my potential energy really manifest itself into the face of the jump and create a lot of air for me. But within that, being passive, there are a lot of different techniques for passively hitting a jump and blowing off speeds. So Lars, I mean, when you're racing, obviously it's a lot different than when you're just messing around off a jump. I mean, if you're just out at your local flow park or something and you're just kind of cruising down a run, the way your feet interact with the ramp of the jump is definitely different than when you're racing at full speed.
Yeah,
Can you maybe talk a little bit about that?
Well, I think that ultimately what it really comes down to is what you're looking at is your speed of approaching the jump is going to dictate the technique that you're going to want to use, and also the altitude that you want to achieve over the double. If you're wanting to get higher altitude and coming in at a bit slower speed, you're going to want to stand in a bit more into the face so you create compression, even if you're on a hardtail, which is going to preload you basically for the lip and that altitude. And ultimately what it comes down to is what you're doing off the lip is the same technique as bunny hopping up a curb or over a log in the trail or something. You're basically just bunny hopping off the lip, and that's what gives you that compression and spring off of the lip. And the faster you go at approaching the same jump, you're also going to need to change your technique to make sure you don't over jump it. If you're going twice as fast at the jump, you're going to need to do nearly the opposite, which is approach the lip at a higher standpoint on your bike and compress a bit later into the lip. So as opposed to compressing at the base of the transition and then springing off the top, you're going to want to approach standing and then compress into the lip. So it's going to push you through and hold you down.
We've talked a lot about leading with our hands, following with our feet, and creating a situation where we ride off twos. And really, I can't think of a more important place to make sure you follow those rules than when you're jumping.
Yeah.
Probably the most dangerous place you could get caught up off fours is off a jump. Being square off a jump, everybody's done it. It's no fun. Land sideways or something, and you're in trouble. One of the benefits of riding off twos, if I do get into a situation where I'm leading properly with my hands and I feel like my feet are truly following my hands, is that I'm able to start to break my body into two parts really off a jump and able to do what we call counter-directional steering, which is just setting ourselves up to make a turn basically in the air or for a turn that's happening as we land. So basically the idea behind counter-directional steering is that when I go up into the air, if say I'm turning left, then I'm going to turn my handlebars to the right in the air, and that's going to commit